Hi, boys and girls. This is Grandma Sheila, and I have a story for you this week that happened to me when I was little. This story is called The Day I Chased the Robbers. We lived about 2 miles out of a little tiny town. And beyond where we lived was all farmland. We lived in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. If you came from that little bitty town and you went across the big river on the bridge, and then you went across a little bridge where the creek ran, our house was right beyond that creek. If you kept going down that road past our house for about 2 miles, there was a big old house down there, and that's where my uncle lived. Well, in that little town, he had a gas station. He owned it. And he also had what they used to call was a garage. Now, that garage was not a place where you just parked cars. What it was a place where they repaired cars. Well, my uncle, he had a practice. Every day, he would put the money that they'd earned in the garage and from selling gas at the gas station where he could put the money where it would be safe. Well, every Friday, he gathered all the money that they had made during the last week, and he put it in a bank bag. Well, when Friday came, he took that money to his house. I think people had heard or seen that that's what he did because he did it every Friday. Now we have to go back a little bit in the story. That year, when this whole story happened, was the year that my sister and my mother and I became Christians. We learned to love Jesus. We joined a church there in that little town. Well, my mother, she was so excited about all the things that she had learned about Jesus and that he was going to come really soon, and we needed to be telling people so they could be ready too. She got so excited that she went to the minister and she said, "Is there any way that I can tell people about Jesus?" And he said, "Well, Violet, yes, there is." And she said, "What is it? I want to tell people about Jesus." He said, "You know, they used to call them tracts that Christians give out to people to tell them about Jesus. Well, on the back of those tracts, there was a card. You could put your name on it and your address and your phone number, and you could mark in the little box that you wanted Bible studies to learn about Jesus. And they were mailed so that they came back to the local church." And he said, "We're getting a lot of those back, and I don't have enough people to go out and give Bible studies to all those people. I know you're a brand new Christian, but wouldn't you like to go out to some of those people's homes and teach them about Jesus?" And Mother said, "I'd love to, but how do I do it?" The pastor, he said, "Well, here at the church, I have some equipment that the church bought. One of the things we have is a screen, and you could stand them up in somebody's house. And then he said, and you'll need one of these. It was called a projector. Now, a projector you could put little square slides into, and they had pictures on them. And the light from the projector would go through, they called them slides. They would go through the slide and it would make the pictures big up on that big screen. And he said, and you'll need this piece of equipment. When I was a little girl, they didn't have DVDs and CDs and internet, none of those things, or YouTube like you see Grandma Sheilla on. They didn't have any of those. So he said, you can take the screen and the slides. They have all the Bible lessons on them, the pictures, and then this other machine, it will slide big round circles that there was tape. They called it tape, but it wasn't sticky. And it recorded sounds of people singing and talking. And he said, you can take this, and here's a box with all the different big round tapes. And you can show the Bible studies to the people. Well, Mother was so excited. She started doing that. She had several people that she would go to, and she would show them the pictures on the big screen, and she would play the tape that went with it. It would tell them all about Jesus. And when they got done with that lesson, she would visit with the people. It was so exciting to her. You know, it's always exciting when you get to tell people about Jesus. So she would bring it home and put it in our house so it would be safe until she went out the next time, because it didn't belong to us. It belonged to the church. Well, all was going really well. And those people were so excited about learning about Jesus. And you know, Jesus told us that we were supposed to go into the whole world and tell everybody about Jesus and that he was coming again. Well, that's what she was doing. And that's what new Christians and old Christians are supposed to do. There was one week Mother took my sister and I in our pink station wagon. I've never figured out why my father would buy a pink station wagon, but that's what we had. And that's what Mother would drive to go give those Bible lessons. It was what we went to the grocery store and to do all the other things that you need a car for. Well, this one afternoon, she took both of us and we went to town to buy groceries. Well, I always liked the day that we got to buy groceries. It was fun to get to choose things to put in the grocery cart. Well, by the time we got back home with our groceries, it was getting close to being dark. I jumped out of the car and I ran to the back door of our house. Well, our doors were always locked. I got to the back door. I reached for the doorknob. I was going to unlock the door. And the door wasn't locked. It was open, just a little bit. I thought, this is funny. Well, I didn't wait for my mother or my sister. They were starting to gather up the bags of groceries to haul them in. So I ran into the house. The first little place beyond the door was kind of like an entryway. And then it went around the corner and it went into the bathroom. And on one wall, there was a big antique cabinet. And I looked at that. My mother really liked that cabinet. And I noticed something strange. All the drawers from that cabinet were pulled out and they were dumped upside down. And everything that had been in them was spread all over the floor. Now I thought, this is really odd. Who would do this? Then I went out the bathroom door into the little hall and I stuck my head around the corner. And this way was my sister and I's bedroom. And when I looked in there, somebody had pulled everything out of our closet. All of our clothes were laying all over the floor, and all of our drawers had been dumped. And it was like whoever did this had gathered all of our stuff and threw it up in the air. There was stuff all over the bed. The dressers were empty. The floor was covered. I was a curious little thing, and I wanted to know what was going on. I should have just gone outside because something bad was going on there. But I ran in the kitchen, and all the kitchen drawers were pulled out, and the cupboards were open, and there was stuff everywhere. And then I saw another very unusual thing. I had just ran from the back door through all those rooms. And when I ran through that messy kitchen now into the dining room, there on the floor sat all that equipment that belonged to the church. Mother never left it sitting out in the middle of the floor. And I thought, oh, somebody's trying to steal our stuff. And then I really started running. I ran toward the living room and I heard feet. And when I got to the living room, the front door was wide open. Well, by this time, my mother and my sister had come in the back door. And I could hear them going, "Who did this? There must have been a robber in here." Then Mother went, "Sheila, where are you? Where are you?" She was afraid that the robbers had taken me. And she came running through into the living room. And there I stood by all that equipment that belonged to the church. And the front door was wide open. Mother said, "Sheila, you must have chased the robbers right from the back door all the way through the house. And they must have ran away when they heard you coming." Mother looked in her and Daddy's bedroom. It was a mess too, but there was nobody in any of those rooms. So Mother, she quickly closed the front door and the back door and locked everything up. And she stood there and she said, "Sheila, they could have taken you. They could have hurt you." And then Mother saw the equipment on the floor that belonged to the church. She said, "They were trying to steal the church's equipment." And we wouldn't have had the money to have bought it all back again for the church. I am so glad, you know. I wonder if there wasn't an angel between you and the robbers. And then she just sat down on the couch and she said, the angels must have protected you, Sheila, from the robbers. And the angels must have made us come home in time. Because oftentimes when we went grocery shopping, we would stop and go through some of the other stores and things. But we didn't this day. We came right home in enough time for me to go in the house. And like a kid, I ran right straight through, curious as to what was going on. I chased the robbers, but God protected me. He protected the church's equipment that was telling the other people about Jesus every week when my mother would take it. We figured out when my father came home what had happened. We never figured out who those robbers were. It was reported. They didn't steal anything out of her house because apparently they got scared and ran away. But my father figured out what they were looking for. They were looking for that money that my uncle always had in his house over the weekend. And generally it was quite a bit of money. And on Monday, when the bank opened, he would take it to the bank. Well, apparently, those thieves, they looked at our mailbox, and our last name was Nelson. And of course, my uncle's last name was Nelson as well. They must have saw the name Nelson on our mailbox and thought, he must hide the money in the house. But they didn't know they were going into the wrong house. God is so good to protect curious little girls and to take care of a mommy and her two daughters coming home alone into their house with robbers. Plus, as I said, I'm sure he must have sent the angels to make more noise than my soft little shoes made running from room to room, so they would be frightened to think there was somebody coming that they should be scared of. He knew that my uncle needed his money, so the robbers never got what they came for. They didn't realize that the equipment that they picked up and the boxes that were with it, they'd gathered it all up. They didn't realize that it belonged to God, and God protects his own stuff that would tell other people about Jesus. He wanted Mother to be able to continue sharing Jesus with the people that were asking for Bible studies. God is good to us. Thank you so much for listening, boys and girls. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.